Hello everybody, hello. My name is Melanie, this is Adventures in Hostessville, and welcome to episode 14 of the Vintage Magazine Project. Today we are doing the 1913 Modern Priscilla. Ba-da-bum, ba-dum-bum, bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So the article I want to take a look at today is the Health and Beauty feature, The Care of the Arms and Hands by Mrs. Eleanor C. Mather. So I'm going to start with the hand part and just do the manicure. And so the first thing I need to do is massage my skin with a mixture of lanolin and lard. I had not expected there to be so many animal products. Right off the bat, I don't buy lard. I don't buy lanolin either. Ooh, maybe that's too much. I mean, how big do I think my hands are? Okay, so let's get an equal amount of lanolin in there. Lanolin, of course, comes from sheep. I don't think this is equal parts. Oh, this is so sticky. It's supposed to be a corkscrew motion with my thumb and forefinger. So all of this stuff in this article is for the most part homemade. There are definitely commercial preparations at this point for all sorts of stuff. Like here, right above the article, there is Dr. J. Parker Pray's toilet preparations. And in 1913, there is a very popular face cream that is at the height of its popularity, and that is Julian Eltinge face cream and face powder. Julian Eltinge actually kind of knows what he's talking about because he also wears this stuff all the time. Because in 1913, he is one of the most famous stars in the entire United States, and he is a female impersonator. Okay, so the next step is to wash this off with some soap and a coarse towel. I think I'm actually going to need dish soap because it is very, very greasy and sticky. Okay, the next step is to rub my fingers in a mix of equal parts glycerin and rose water. So Julian Eltinge is a tricky fella to nail down on any sort of facts around his life, starting with how you pronounce his last name. The only thing that I could find, like from the time where I heard somebody pronouncing it, was this short clip of this thing from the late 20s where he was on like this variety show. Reginald Denny introduces him as Julian Eltinge, and it was like, great, nailed it. But then Julian Eltinge does his little dance number, and afterwards this other guy hands him a microphone and says, would you like to say a few words, Mr. Eltinge? So he is born in either 1881 or 1883 in Massachusetts, and by the time he's like 14, he is performing essentially in drag. Now, female impersonation is way less sort of like unexpected then, especially there in Boston, right? He's performing with a lot of people who have been doing a lot of stuff with the Hasty Pudding Theatrical Club. Of course, that's Harvard's theater club. They're all male, so it's always all guys all the time. The difference with him is that he's really good at it. And what sort of sets him apart is that he isn't interested in doing a caricature people don't know, and then he can do the surprise bit at curtain call where he takes off his wig and oh my gosh, it's a man, you know. He's not a small guy. He's like 5'9". He also doesn't have a high voice, and he dances and sings as well, and when he sings he is a baritone, but he doesn't do a falsetto voice or this I'm a woman, you know, kind of thing. He just sings like himself, and the reviews say you buy it, you know, you buy it. He is so believably feminine that you just think like, oh, that woman with that delicious low contralto. And it's not long before a New York producer notices how great he is and offers to take him to New York. All right, moving right along, the next step is to clean underneath my nails with hydrogen peroxide on some cotton and an orange stick. So here we go. So Julian Eltinge goes to New York and he is in this play, this musical called Mr. Wicks of Wickham. Most of the songs in it are written by Jerome Kern, who is, of course, one of the giants of the American musical theater. He'll go on to write Showboat. Mr. Wicks of Wickham is not Showboat. He's not a giant of musical theater yet. But Julian Eltinge is very successful in it. He gets really great reviews and he starts to work all of the time. So he's doing other Broadway shows. He's also doing vaudeville. He tours the United States. He tours Europe. At one point, he does a command performance for King Edward. Edward likes it so much that he gifts him a white bulldog to say thank you. For a while, Eltinge is touring with George M. Cohan's company. He's, I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. You're a grand old flag, you're a high fly, and give my regards to Broadway. I could do this for hours. Anyway, George M. Cohan basically runs Broadway at this point, so hooking up with him is this huge deal. And he's so famous that they actually are going to name a theater after him, and they do. They build a theater called the Julian Eltinge Theater, and there are not a lot of Broadway theaters named after individual people, but that is one. He never actually ends up performing in it, though, because by the time it's finished in, I think, 1912, he's so famous that it's not big enough. It only seats 800 people, and by that point, like, he's drawing crowds that are a lot bigger than that. He is one of the highest paid stars on Broadway. He is making in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000 a week. If you adjust that for inflation, he's taking in $100,000 a week. Anyway, he is about to become even more famous because in 1911, I believe, he is in his most famous play ever, and that is called The Fascinating Widow. All right, the next part is super basic. I just file them with a nail file, which is a thing I should do instead of just cutting them with the clippers like I normally do. So, The Fascinating Widow is a show that was written specifically for Julian Eltinge. And in this show, the setup is that instead of playing a woman, he is playing a man who has to disguise himself as a woman. What this means is that there are even more costume changes than usual. And there are always costume changes. Like, that's part of the reasons people go to it, because he looks good. He knows fashion. He's very careful about his makeup and matching the clothes and matching the shoes. Teenage girls go to these shows to get fashion ideas. Now is doing even more costume changes because there's all this back and forth between when he's the man and when he's the woman. And again, because of the corsets and the big hats and everything, it's even more impressive that it's so fast. It's like, how did he do that? And the audiences love it. He is very intent on making sure everybody knows that he is this kind of manly man, right? He likes cigars, he likes boxing. He'll actually pick a fight with anybody that calls him a sissy. And there's this story about he's in some new show where there's new actors and stagehands that don't know him, and they're all kind of giving him the side eye, like the guy in the corset. And at one point he's like, yeah, I wear women's clothes. The first person that makes a crack about it is going to get a punch in the mush. Which is a sentence I'm probably going to be saying a lot now. But he also now, after The Fascinating Widow, always has his publicity shots taken as a man. And there might be a picture of him as a woman as well. There's this great one where it's a wedding scene and he's this handsome man in a tuxedo and he's got this beautiful bride who is also him, you know, or this one that I love where he's on this rowboat and he's like rowing, he's all virile and husky, and there are these four ladies in the rowboat that are just like, oh, Julian Eltinge, but the four ladies are also all him. And when I say manly, like, he's 1913 manly, right? You know, I mean, like, rugged isn't the name of the game. And it's after this show comes out that he comes out with this magazine, Julian Eltinge's Tips for Beauty, I think it's called. Then he's selling this cold cream, and if you buy the cold cream, you can send in for a picture of any one of these 6 Julian Eltinges. But he'll also then, in these magazines, advertise cigars. Some theater, he's on tour throughout the United States, and there are these lobby cards in this theater where he's gonna be on the one side, there's this big lobby card of man, Julian Eltinge, advertising these cigars and like, these are great cigars. I smoke them, so you should smoke them too. But then in the other window, there's Julian Eltinge saying, this is the brand of corset that I use. You should wear it too. Like, he's just, you can't really nail him down. And the Chicago Tribune, I think, in fact, is who coins this term for him, that they call him ambisextrous. And there's been a lot of debate, of course, over the years as to what was going on with him. Like, was he a closeted gay man? Was he trans? Was he asexual? Was he just a straight guy that made a lot of money dressing up as women? There's no actual like evidence of him ever having had a relationship with anybody. All right, for the next step, I need to soften my cuticles so that I can push them back, and I am supposed to do that by soaking them in almond oil and then wrapping bandages over them. I didn't know quite what to use, so I have tiny Band-Aids and I had one giant ace bandage. I'm going with the tiny Band-Aid. At this point, right around 1917, he decides he's gonna pack it up and he is going to just move to LA and be a movie star. This doesn't stick on almond oil. Maybe I should have done the ace bandage. Anyway, he gets out there and all of his touring is kind of paid off because the country knows who he is. And he does movies with Rudolph Valentino and with Mary Pickford and with Douglas Fairbanks. At one point, he is a bigger box office draw than Charlie Chaplin. But it's not gonna last long. The end of his moment is coming with the end of the 1920s. This is ridiculous. I need a different bandage. The emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Never a boast or brave. Okay, that was an adventure. But I did soften my cuticles with the almond oil, and then I went ahead and pushed them back with the orange stick. So the final step is the polish. Polish as we think of it doesn't really come out until the 1920s. So at this point, you've got these powder polishes that you buff on with either a chamois, which I don't have, or some cotton, which I do. And they said in the magazine to use a mixture of glycerin and powdered pumice. I couldn't find that, but I have this clay powder here. Oh, that's really thick. I don't know. They also said if you wanted it to be lightly colored, you could do, what did they say? You could follow it with a powder, iris or lustrite, or some one of the prepared polishes. So the stock market crash happens in 1929. That's rough for everybody, and he loses a ton of money. Not as much as some people. He apparently was a pretty smart investor, but the problem is that in 1930, the Hays Code comes through. And that is the like sort of moral code that Hollywood is putting on itself. And one of the things that you definitely cannot have is any indication of sexual perversion, and cross-dressing counts. And he still is kind of trying to do vaudeville at this point, but they're really cracking down on cross-dressing there too, because they're trying to shut down a lot of these burlesque houses where the cross-dressing is a little bit more sexual in nature, I guess, and more intended to titillate than Julian Eltinge is. So he can't perform. There's very little that he can do. Except for live with his mom and drink. And that's kind of what he does apparently for most of the 30s. In 1940, he tries to have sort of a comeback. So he's gonna do this show, but he can't perform in drag. He can't perform in women's clothing. So what his show ends up being is it's him in a tuxedo, like standing next to a dress on a dress form, singing his old songs and talking about what he would be wearing if he was allowed to wear it. But in 1941, the producer Billy Rose, who is a really big deal on Broadway at this point, he is going to do this sort of nostalgic kind of show. And he says, we've got you, Julian. You're going to be in this show. You're going to do your old stuff. It's going to be great. And maybe it would have. It's hard to say because just over a week after it opens, Julian Eltinge dies. Embroiled in ambiguity up until the end. Was it a cerebral hemorrhage? Was it kidney failure? Who knows? And he's sort of forgotten. So I don't know what I'm here to do. Am I here to just say, let's remember this guy that we already forgot? Maybe. But I don't know. I think my hands look okay, except for that they're covered in clay. They smell rosy and they are soft and supple. Will I do this again? Probably, because I bought so much stuff from the drugstore to do it. So if you would like to support the show and keep me in glycerin and rosewater money, you can subscribe at patreon.com/adventures in Hostessville. That link is down below. Also, if you follow me on Facebook and Instagram, I'll put up a bunch of pictures of Julian Eltinge. It's absolutely worth seeing him. And hit like and subscribe here. We got 2 more weeks of 1913. Thanks a bunch and have a great day.